The story of Bruce Lee begins not in the back alleys of Hong Kong, but in the bustling Chinatown of San Francisco, on November 27, 1940. He was born Lee Jun Fan, a name that would one day echo across the world. But on that day he was just a tiny baby, born in both the hour and the year of the dragon, an omen for the spectacular life to come. His father, Lee Hoi Chen, was a famous Cantonese opera singer and film actor. His mother, Grace Ho, came from one of the wealthiest and most powerful clans in Hong Kong and was of half Chinese and half Caucasian descent. Bruce's parents had traveled to California in 1939 for an international opera tour. His mother was 3 months pregnant at the time. It was an attending nurse at the Chinese hospital in San Francisco's Chinatown who suggested the English name Bruce. His family, however, never used it during his preschool years. To them he was simply Lee Jun Fan, the Little Dragon. Part 2, The Return to Hong Kong. When Bruce was only 3 months old, he appeared in his first film, Golden Gate Girl, serving as the stand-in for an American baby. It was the beginning of a film career that would span over 20 movies as a child actor. Soon after, the family returned to Hong Kong. They settled in a small 2-room apartment at 218 Nathan Street in the Kowloon district, above a row of shops. The homeless would often sleep near the door of the building. Bruce's childhood was not one of privilege. His father, though famous, struggled with opium addiction, a battle that would cast a long shadow over the family. Bruce's mother, Grace, came from a wealthy Eurasian family, but the Lees lived modestly. Part 3, War and Survival. When Bruce was just over 1 year old on Christmas Day 1941, the British and Chinese surrendered Hong Kong to Japan. The occupation would last 4 brutal years. The Lee family's apartment was across from a Japanese military camp. As a small boy, Bruce reportedly enjoyed standing on the balcony and shaking his fist at the Japanese soldiers. It was a small act of defiance from a child who refused to be intimidated. The war years were terrifying. Bruce's father, using his fame, agreed to help the Japanese, which safeguarded the family but left young Bruce vulnerable to bullying from those who considered the Lees traitors. The children in the neighborhood would taunt him, calling him names, reminding him of his father's choices. Bruce learned early that the world could be cruel. He also learned that he would never back down. Part 4, The Child Actor. After the war ended, Bruce's natural talent in front of the camera became evident. Beginning in 1946, he appeared in roughly 20 movies as a child actor. He was a natural, his scrappy screen persona impressing audiences. But the film sets were not always glamorous. Bruce would often accompany his father to the opera house where the elder Lee would rehearse. Back in the 1940s, Cantonese opera was just becoming popular, so Bruce's father would perform in music halls rather than ornate opera houses. It was at one of these venues that Bruce met another actor's son, Shu Ki-Luen, later known as Unicorn, whom he quickly befriended. The boys would practice fighting with each other. Unicorn would go on to become a famous Chinese actor in his own right. Even then, Bruce was surrounded by the world of performance. Part 5, The Troublemaker. Bruce's schooling was a constant battle. At age 12 he began attending La Salle College, a boys' Catholic school. He was interested in learning but not in school. He quickly became known as a troublemaker. The adolescent Bruce was taunted by British students for his Chinese background. The English boys from King George V School thought they were superior to the Chinese. Bruce refused to accept their prejudice. He responded with his fists. He started his own gang called the Junction Street 8 Tigers. After school the group constantly fought the English boys. Bruce's temper and quick fists got him in trouble with the Hong Kong police on numerous occasions. He was eventually expelled for his behavior. His parents were at their wits' end. What could they do with this uncontrollable son? Part 6, The Beating That Changed Everything. One day Bruce was beaten up by a street gang. He was outnumbered, overpowered, and humiliated. The bruises on his face were a stark reminder of his vulnerability. After getting one too many black eyes, Bruce's parents agreed to let him take kung fu lessons in order to better defend himself from bullies. They hoped the discipline of martial arts would channel his aggression into something productive. Bruce was determined to learn how to fight, not just to win but to never be beaten again. Part 7, The Master and the Student. At 13 years old, Bruce began studying Wing Chun Kung Fu under the legendary master Yip Man in Hong Kong. He studied with Yip Man from 1954 to 1959. But the path was not easy. Bruce didn't immediately receive instruction from the Grandmaster himself. Yip Man assigned one of his senior students, Wang Shun Leung, to be Bruce's primary teacher. Bruce, determined to become a good fighter, worked hard and experienced tremendous progress under Wang's tutelage. His fellow students, however, shared an extreme dislike for him. Jealous of his status as a child actor and the success he had achieved, many of them made efforts to get Bruce expelled from the Wing Chun school. Their reason was based on Bruce's heritage. Since his mother was Eurasian, they argued that Yip Man shouldn't teach Chinese martial arts to someone of mixed race. During those days, it wasn't acceptable for non-Chinese to learn Kung Fu. But Yip Man didn't see it that way and kept Bruce around. Bruce threw himself into martial arts and began spending every waking moment practicing. The promise he showed wasn't lost on Yip Man, who trained with him and helped Bruce develop a deep, meaningful understanding of the philosophical side of Kung Fu. His influence is evidenced by Lee's famous Be Water quote and other martial arts-related ideas. Part 8, The Cha-Cha Champion. Bruce was not just a fighter, he was also a dancer. He took up cha-cha dancing and at age 18, won a major dance championship in Hong Kong, becoming the Crown Colony Cha-Cha champion. The grace, balance, and entertaining nature of his dancing skills, coupled with his martial arts power and fluidity, would later make for a mesmerizing combination in his future films. Even on the dance floor, Bruce was a champion. Part 9, The Exile. Despite his training, Bruce didn't stop getting into street fights. His temper and quick fists continued to land him in trouble. After an arrest when he was 17, his parents told him it would be safer and better for him to go to San Francisco. With only $100 in his pocket, an 18-year-old Bruce departed from Hong Kong for the United States, arriving in San Francisco, California, before settling in Seattle, Washington. On the journey, Bruce could be found teaching some of the more affluent passengers how to dance. He was banished from his homeland, sent away to shape up. But what seemed like a punishment would become the foundation of his destiny. Part 10, The New Beginning. Bruce arrived in San Francisco's Chinatown in 1959 and worked in a close relative's restaurant. He eventually made his way to Seattle, Washington, where he enrolled at the University of Washington to study philosophy. He also received his high school diploma from Edison Technical School. He found time to practice his beloved Kung Fu techniques and began teaching Wing Chun to his fellow students and others. In 1963, he opened his first Kung Fu school at 4750 University Way in Seattle. He also taught Cha-Cha for a brief period. The troubled teenager from Hong Kong had become a teacher, a philosopher, and a man with a vision. The boy who had been beaten, bullied, and banished was now forging his own path. Part 11, The Legacy Begins. Bruce Lee's childhood was a crucible of hardship, violence, and rejection. He was born into a world at war, raised in poverty, bullied for his heritage, and expelled from school. He was beaten by gangs, arrested by police, and sent away by his own parents. But from that crucible emerged a dragon. He went on to become a groundbreaking actor, director, and martial arts expert. He pioneered his own martial arts technique, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. He bridged the divide between Eastern and Western cultures and smashed long-held stereotypes of Asians and Asian Americans. The boy who became a dragon, that's what they called him. And it was true. The little dragon born in the year of the dragon had grown into a legend. But Bruce himself never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the small two-room apartment on Nathan Street. He never forgot the bullying, the beatings, the rejection. He carried those scars with him, and they fueled his determination to become the best. "I feel I have this great creative and spiritual force within me," he wrote in a letter to a friend at age 22. That force was forged in the fires of his childhood. A childhood of struggle, pain, and survival. In 1959, Bruce Lee arrived in Seattle with only $100 in his pocket and a heart full of determination. The troublemaker from Hong Kong was now a young man on a mission. He worked odd jobs, teaching dance lessons, waiting tables, and doing whatever it took to survive. But his true passion was martial arts. He began teaching Wing Chun to fellow students at the University of Washington, where he was studying philosophy. His classes were small at first, just a handful of curious students. But word spread quickly about the young Chinese man with lightning-fast hands. In 1963, Bruce opened his first martial arts school at 4750 University Way in Seattle. It was a modest space, but it was his. He called it the Lee Jun Fan Kung Fu Institute. Students came from all over to learn from him. He was not just teaching them how to fight, he was teaching them a philosophy of life. Bruce believed in breaking the rules of traditional martial arts. He believed that rigid styles limited a fighter's potential. He developed his own system, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. It was fluid, adaptable, and practical. It was an expression of his own philosophy: be water, my friend. Be water. Part 2, The Love Story. While Bruce was building his dream in Seattle, he met a young woman named Linda Emery. She was a student at the University of Washington, and she was curious about the mysterious Chinese man who taught kung fu. Linda attended one of Bruce's demonstrations and she was captivated. He was charismatic, intelligent, and utterly unlike anyone she had ever met. They began talking and soon they were inseparable. Bruce taught Linda about martial arts, philosophy, and Chinese culture. Linda taught Bruce about patience, kindness, and the power of quiet strength. She was his anchor, his support, his greatest cheerleader. Their love grew quickly and deeply. On August 17, 1964, Bruce and Linda were married in a small ceremony in Seattle. Bruce was just 23 years old and Linda was 19. They were young but they knew they had found something special. Their honeymoon was simple, a brief trip to Oakland, California, where Bruce was opening his second martial arts school. It was the beginning of a partnership that would last a lifetime. Part 3, The Early Struggles. Life was not always easy for the young couple. Bruce poured his heart and soul into his martial arts schools, but money was tight. He worked long hours teaching classes and promoting his art. Linda supported him every step of the way, managing the household and caring for their growing family. Their first child, Brandon, was born in 1965. A daughter, Shannon, followed in 1969. Bruce was a devoted father, doting on his children with love and affection. Despite his success as a martial artist, Bruce struggled to break into Hollywood. He had been a child actor in Hong Kong, but the American film industry was not ready for an Asian leading man. He was cast in small, stereotypical roles: houseboys, servants, villains. It was frustrating, humiliating, and deeply unfair. But Bruce refused to give up. He believed in himself and Linda believed in him too. She encouraged him to keep pushing, to keep fighting, to never let the rejections break his spirit. One day, he told her, "I will be a star. I will show them what I can do. And I will make you proud." Part 4, The Green Hornet. In 1966, Bruce got his big break. He was cast as Kato in the television series The Green Hornet. It was not the starring role, but it was a start. For the first time, an American audience could see Bruce's incredible martial arts skills. The show was short-lived, canceled after only one season. But Bruce had made an impression. His fighting style was fast, fluid, and unlike anything American audiences had ever seen. He became a cult favorite and his fame began to grow. But Hollywood still refused to see him as a leading man. He was offered more stereotypical roles: sidekicks, villains, and comic relief. Bruce turned them all down. He would not be typecast. He would not be pigeonholed. He would wait for the right opportunity or he would create it himself. Linda stood by him through the lean years. She believed in his vision even when the rest of the world did not. Part 5, The Hong Kong Triumph. In 1971, Bruce made a decision that would change his life forever. He returned to Hong Kong to make a film. The movie was called The Big Boss and it was a massive hit. It broke box office records across Asia and made Bruce Lee a superstar. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of the dragon. He followed up with Fist of Fury, which was even more successful. Then came Way of the Dragon, which Bruce wrote, directed, and starred in. In one iconic scene he faced off against the legendary Chuck Norris in the Roman Colosseum. It was a fight that would go down in cinematic history. Bruce had finally achieved what he had always dreamed of. He was a star. He was the highest paid actor in Hong Kong. He was a global phenomenon. Part 6, Hollywood Returns. Now that Bruce had conquered Asia, Hollywood came calling. He was offered the lead role in a new film called Enter the Dragon. It was the first time an Asian actor had been given a starring role in a major Hollywood production. Bruce poured his heart and soul into the film. He choreographed the fight scenes himself, blending martial arts with cinematic flair. The movie was a masterpiece, a thrilling combination of action, drama, and philosophy. Enter the Dragon was released in 1973, and it was an instant classic. It made Bruce Lee a global icon, a symbol of strength, intelligence, and cultural pride. He had broken barriers and smashed stereotypes. He had proven that an Asian actor could carry a Hollywood film. Part 7, The True Love. Throughout his rise to fame, Linda remained Bruce's rock. She was his wife, his partner, and his greatest supporter. She managed his finances, handled his business affairs, and kept him grounded. Their marriage was a partnership of equals. Bruce respected Linda's intelligence and independence, and she respected his passion and determination. They laughed together, cried together, and built a life together. Bruce was a devoted husband and father. Despite his busy schedule, he made time for his family. He would play with his children, teach them martial arts, and shower them with love. He often said that his family was the most important thing in his life. "Brandon and Shannon are my greatest achievements," he would say. "They are my legacy." Part 8, The Tragic End. On July 20, 1973, Bruce Lee died suddenly in Hong Kong. He was just 32 years old. The news sent shockwaves around the world. The dragon had fallen. The cause of death was a cerebral edema, a swelling of the brain caused by a reaction to medication. It was sudden, unexpected, and devastating. Linda was shattered. She had lost her soulmate, her partner, her best friend. But she was determined to honor his memory. She would not let his legacy die. Part 9, The Legacy. Linda dedicated her life to preserving Bruce's legacy. She wrote books about his life and philosophy, managed his estate, and ensured that his teachings continued to inspire generations. She also raised their 2 children, Brandon and Shannon, with the same values that Bruce had taught her: discipline, determination, and the importance of being true to oneself. Brandon followed in his father's footsteps, becoming a martial artist and actor. He was on the verge of stardom when tragedy struck again. In 1993, Brandon was accidentally killed on the set of The Crow. He was just 28 years old. Linda endured the loss of her husband and her son with grace and strength. She continued to honor both of them, ensuring that their legacies would never be forgotten. Part 10, The Eternal Dragon. Bruce Lee's influence is still felt today. He is a cultural icon, a symbol of strength and determination. His philosophy, "Be water, my friend," has inspired millions of people around the world. But for Linda, he will always be the young man she fell in love with in Seattle. She once said, "I never had a bad day with Bruce. He always had a smile on his face even when things were tough." Their love story was short, but it was beautiful. It was a story of 2 people from different worlds who found each other and built a life together. It was a story of love, sacrifice, and unwavering support. Bruce Lee once said, "I am not a master. I am a student. Always a student." He lived his life with humility, passion, and purpose. And he loved with all his heart. The dragon may have fallen, but his spirit lives on. And his love for Linda, and hers for him, will never fade. On July 20, 1973, Bruce Lee was at the height of his powers. He was 32 years old, a global superstar and the highest-paid actor in Hong Kong. His film Enter the Dragon was about to be released, and the world was waiting to see what the dragon would do next. Bruce had achieved everything he had ever dreamed of. He had broken barriers, smashed stereotypes, and proven that an Asian actor could carry a Hollywood film. He was a martial arts legend, a philosopher, and a cultural icon. He had a beautiful wife, Linda, and 2 wonderful children, Brandon and Shannon. But on that fateful day, the dragon's flame would be extinguished. Part 2, The Day Begins. The morning of July 20, 1973, began like any other. Bruce was at home in Hong Kong, preparing for a meeting with his friend and business partner, Raymond Chow. They were discussing the script for their new film, Game of Death, which Bruce was writing, directing, and starring in. Bruce was in good spirits. He had been working tirelessly on the film, and he was excited about the possibilities. He had big plans for the future. More films, more innovations, more ways to push the boundaries of martial arts and cinema. At around 1:30 p.m., Bruce left his home and drove to the apartment of Betty Ting Pei, a Taiwanese actress who was also starring in Game of Death. They were supposed to discuss the script and go over some scenes. Bruce arrived at Betty's apartment, and the 2 of them went over the script for several hours. Part 3, The Headache. At around 4 p.m., Bruce began to complain of a headache. He told Betty that he wasn't feeling well and that he needed to lie down. Betty gave him some painkillers, a common medication called Equagesic, which contained aspirin and a muscle relaxant. Bruce took the pills and lay down on Betty's bed to rest. He told her that he would take a short nap and that she should wake him when Raymond Chow arrived. The hours passed and Bruce did not wake up. He was sleeping deeply, his breathing steady and calm. Part 4, The Discovery. At around 7:30 p.m., Raymond Chow arrived at Betty's apartment. He knocked on the door and Betty let him in. They went to check on Bruce, but he was still asleep. They tried to wake him, but he did not respond. They grew concerned. Bruce was a light sleeper and he usually woke up easily. They tried again, shaking him gently, calling his name. Still there was no response. Raymond Chow called for an ambulance. The paramedics arrived quickly and rushed Bruce to the hospital. But it was too late. Bruce Lee was already gone. Part 5, The Medical Mystery. The cause of Bruce Lee's death was a cerebral edema, a swelling of the brain caused by a reaction to the medication he had taken. The Equagesic had triggered an allergic reaction, causing his brain to swell rapidly. The swelling had compressed his brainstem, cutting off the signals that controlled his breathing and heart. It was a rare and unpredictable reaction, one that could not have been foreseen. Bruce had taken similar medications before without any problems. But on that day his body reacted differently. The medical examiner ruled the death as death by misadventure, a tragic accident that could not have been prevented. Part 6, The Aftermath. The news of Bruce Lee's death sent shockwaves around the world. Fans were devastated. The martial arts community was in mourning. The world had lost a legend. Linda, Bruce's wife, was shattered. She had lost her soulmate, her partner, her best friend. She flew to Hong Kong immediately to identify the body and make funeral arrangements. The outpouring of grief was overwhelming. Thousands of fans lined the streets of Hong Kong to pay their respects. Bruce's funeral was held on July 25, 1973, at the Kowloon Funeral Home. The service was attended by family, friends, and celebrities from around the world. Linda was stoic, holding back tears as she said goodbye to the love of her life. Part 7, The Conspiracy Theories. In the years following Bruce's death, numerous conspiracy theories emerged. Some people believed that he had been killed by rival martial artists. Others believed that he had been poisoned by a secret society. Some even believed that he was still alive, hiding in the shadows. But the evidence was clear. Bruce had died of an allergic reaction to medication. There was no foul play, no conspiracy, no hidden agenda. It was simply a tragic accident. Part 8, The Legacy. Bruce Lee's death was a tragedy, but his legacy lives on. He is remembered as one of the greatest martial artists of all time, a pioneer who revolutionized both martial arts and cinema. His philosophy of being water has inspired millions of people around the world. Linda dedicated her life to preserving Bruce's legacy. She wrote books about his life and philosophy, managed his estate, and ensured that his teachings continued to inspire generations. Their children, Brandon and Shannon, followed in their father's footsteps. Brandon became a martial artist and actor, but tragically he was also taken too soon. In 1993 he was accidentally killed on the set of The Crow. He was just 28 years old. Part 9, The Eternal Dragon. Bruce Lee's life was brief, but it was extraordinary. He achieved more in 32 years than most people achieve in a lifetime. He broke down barriers, challenged stereotypes, and inspired millions. He was a fighter, a philosopher, a teacher, and a loving husband and father. He was a man who believed in the power of the human spirit and the importance of staying true to oneself. His famous words, "Be water, my friend," continue to resonate with people around the world. Water is fluid, adaptable, and unstoppable. It can flow or it can crash. It is soft yet powerful. It is a metaphor for life, for martial arts, for everything. Bruce Lee was water. He flowed through life with grace and determination. He crashed through barriers with power and conviction. And though he is gone, his spirit continues to flow through the hearts and minds of millions. Epilogue. The Dragon's Eternal Flame. Bruce Lee once said, "The key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering." He lived that life. He is remembered not just as a martial artist or an actor, but as a symbol of strength, courage, and determination. His death was a tragedy, but his life was a triumph. He taught us to be like water, to adapt, to flow, to overcome. He taught us to believe in ourselves and to never stop fighting for our dreams. Bruce Lee may have left this world on July 20, 1973, but his flame will never be extinguished. The dragon is eternal.